Hello and welcome back to Sports Done Right. I'm your host, Hunter Wright. No co-host this week. It'll be just me, but we still got a great show lined up for you. Says every host of every show ever. We got a lot to go over this week on the show. We've got top 10 underutilized players in the NFL, rapid fire news, Antonio Brown is at it again, an update on Tua and the concussion protocol, retirements around the league, the Alabama Texas A&M game came and went. Danny Dimes makes a huge comeback in London. The Rams have struggled since winning the Super Bowl last year. State of the Jags and our offensive and defensive players of the week. Number 10 most underutilized player in the league is Julio Jones. He signed a 1-year Legends deal for $6 million. And while it was universally known that he was going to have a limited role in this offense, he could still use a bigger role than what he's had. He's played 2 games. He's been targeted 7 times, 4 catches, 76 yards. He could be used more in this offense, especially when they were missing Mike Evans. He can be a bigger factor than this. Number 2 is Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara, the Saints drafted in the 3rd round back in 2017. He's been the lead running back since then. He's carried the ball 47 times over the last 3 games for 203 yards. He's caught 11 passes, but he's been losing touches and scoring opportunities to Taysom Hill and Mark Ingram. He has not had a rushing touchdown yet this season. Number 8 is Mecole Hardman. Hardman's been targeted 12 times. He's caught 8 passes for 71 yards and a touchdown. In week 1, he had 6 targets. In week 2, he had 4. And then in weeks 3 and 4, he had 1 target each. His only competition is Juju Smith-Schuster, Valdez-Scantling, and the rookie Sky Moore. I could see Hardman getting a lot more action in this offense than he is. Number 7 for the Arizona Cardinals, Rondale Moore. Now, Rondale Moore was drafted in the 2nd round back in 2021. He's played in 2 games. He's been targeted 13 times, 10 catches. He has 85 career touches and 579 career scrimmage yards for 1 touchdown. He's not just being underutilized this year, he's been underutilized last season. He is a Deebo Samuel type of player. He may not be as good as Deebo, but he's got that kind of skill set where you can use him in the running game on some sweeps or at wide back. And the Cardinals should be using him a lot more. He needs to be incorporated more into this offense. Number 6 is Allen Robinson. Oh boy, do we miss him in Duval. He signed a 3-year, $46.5 million contract with the Rams, and so far he has had 23 targets, 12 catches, 107 yards, 1 touchdown. He had 14 touchdowns in 2015. During his time with the Jaguars, he averaged 4.7 receptions per game and 66 yards. In Chicago, he averaged 5.1 receptions per game and 62 yards. He's had plenty of bad quarterbacks throwing him the ball. Now he's with Matthew Stafford, and through 4 games, he has 12 catches. I don't know if he's starting to physically decline or if the Rams just haven't been focusing on him with Cooper Kupp in that offense and the rise of Brian Skowronek. But I see no reason why Skowronek is getting more action than A-Rob. Number 5 is Najee Harris. Najee Harris has 69 carries for 222 yards, 1 touchdown, 13 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown. And he has only had over 15 carries in a game 1 time this year. For a team that is rebuilding and whose quarterbacks are Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, they need to be relying heavily on the run game. Yet, like I said, Harris has only over 15 carries once this season. They should be running the ball at least 20 times a game with Najee Harris. Number 4, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Henry signed a 3-year, $37.5 million contract with the Patriots in 2021. Jonnu Smith signed a 4-year, $50 million contract with the Patriots in 2021 as well. The Patriots have assembled one of the best tight end groups in the league. Yet Henry has 9 catches for 95 yards. Smith has 7 catches for 58 yards. Neither one of them has scored a touchdown. Henry averaged 42.2 yards per game with the Chargers, and Jonnu had 8 touchdowns with the Titans in 2020 and only 1 touchdown so far during his time with the Patriots. These 2 tight ends should be getting the ball way more than they should. Otherwise, why did you shell out so much money just to have these guys go in and block on every play? Number 3 is Christian Watson. Watson was the 34th overall pick in this year's draft. He has played in 4 games. He started once. He has been targeted 11 times, and he's come away with 7 catches for 52 yards, averaging 7.4 yards per catch. No touchdowns, 3 carries for 19 yards, and a rushing touchdown, though. The rookie is 6'5", 200 pounds. He has excellent size. I can see him being a big playmaker in this offense that has lost Davante Adams and needs a receiver 1. But instead, Aaron Rodgers seems content to air it out to a past his prime Randall Cobb. And I just can't fathom why you keep going to Randall Cobb, who was retired at one point, and you got a 6'5" rookie with fresh legs. And 7 catches off of 11 targets. It's not like he's dropping the ball and missing opportunities. He's capitalizing for the most part. Rodgers doesn't seem to like the young cast he has in that receiving core. Number 2 is Kyle Pitts. This is just sad. He was the 4th overall pick in 2021. But during his rookie season, he had 1,026 yards. Good. Only 1 touchdown. Bad. This season, he's been targeted 22 times, 10 catches, 150 yards. And he's being used as a decoy, mostly. You have a universal talent, a generational talent at tight end. They call him the unicorn because he's a rare breed of tight end. And yet, you're using him as a decoy to get guys obscure, no-name receivers open when your best weapon is Kyle Pitts. That just doesn't add up. And the number 1 most utilized player in the league was obviously going to be Kadarius Toney. It's been a running gag on this show for weeks and weeks. I've made a fake missing persons graphic with Tony's face that I've shown in every episode this season as a gag because it just doesn't make any sense how Tony, who was one of the best playmakers I've ever seen at the University of Florida, cannot get his hands on the ball in the NFL. And I don't understand. I don't understand at all. His rookie season, he only had 42 touches for 426 total scrimmage yards. But I blamed that mostly on the incompetence of the coaches. But now they've got Brian Daboll, who's an offensive genius who works with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. He's coaching the Giants now. And still, Kadarius Toney, 2 games played, 3 targets. He's caught 2 passes, has no yards. He's run the ball twice for 23 yards. Why did you draft the guy 20th overall in 2021 if you weren't going to use him? To say it's frustrating is an understatement. To say it's mind-boggling is an understatement. To say that this is just plain sad would also be an understatement. But moving on. Rapid fire news. Matt Rhule has been fired. He signed a 7-year, $62 million contract with the Panthers back in 2020. After 2 1/4 seasons, he has won 11 out of 38 games. So yeah, he's out in Carolina. The search for a new head coach will begin. Baker Mayfield suffers a high ankle sprain. He will miss time. Sam Darnold is still injured from the preseason. Panthers will start XFL star PJ Walker. On his NFL career, he is 2-0 as a starter, 57% passing completion percentage of 57%, 790 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 8 interceptions, which is scary. A passer rating of 54.5. I like PJ Walker because he's mobile, he's got a nice sidearm. I think he can be a very good backup in this league, and I'm glad that he's getting an opportunity to start for a while. He does have to cut back on those turnovers. That's 4 interceptions for every touchdown. That's way too many. In Tennessee, Derrick Henry is tied with Earl Campbell with 73 career touchdowns. With the Titans, Eddie George holds the franchise record with 74. Now, George, who played for the Houston Oilers and Tennessee Titans franchise, scored 74 touchdowns in 128 games. Derrick Henry has 73 touchdowns in 91 games played and only 60 games started. So Henry is going to blow this record out of the water and just take it to unbelievable heights before he hangs up his jersey for good. And in college football, James Madison is ranked 25th in the FBS, and this is their first season ever in Division 1A FBS. The program started back in 1972, but this is their first season in FBS. They're 5-0 now. Senior quarterback Todd Centeio, 6 feet tall, 222 pounds, from West Palm Beach, Florida. He's a transfer from Colorado State. He's been having an excellent year. Over 1,300 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, which is tied for 9th place. He has only thrown 1 interception, 289 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. In a Week 1 win over Mid-Tennessee State, he had 6 passing touchdowns and 110 rushing yards. I've been keeping my eye on him ever since that game. Now, AB foolishness. I'm going to make this brief. Antonio Brown is back in the news for the trifecta of terror. He was caught on camera exposing himself in a pool in Dubai. He sold a fake watch for $160,000, for which he's being sued. And he's being accused of stealing $122,000 worth of jewelry in Dubai, according to Andy Slater of Fox Sports. Moving on to Tua and the concussion protocol. Now, the NFL and NFLPA announced that the Dolphins medical staff properly applied concussion protocols to Tua during the Bills game, but the protocols were insufficient at the time. While the investigation determined that the team medical staff and unaffiliated medical professionals followed the steps of the protocol as written, the NFL and NFLPA agree that the outcome in this case is not what was intended when the protocols were drafted. Tua did not report or exhibit any signs or symptoms of concussion during his locker room exam, during the remainder of the game, or throughout the following week, the joint statement says. Well, I don't know what you call barely being able to stand up and having no control over your fingers, but okay. The NFL and NFLPA just agreed to update concussion protocols that will prohibit a player from returning to a game if he demonstrates any gross motor instability. Oh, you mean like the aforementioned finger thing? Or again, not being able to stand up? The man was staggering and collapsing Every step he took, he was falling to the ground. It was like watching a newborn giraffe try to walk. The term ataxia has been added to the mandatory no-go symptoms. Ataxia is defined as abnormality of balance, stability, motor coordination, or dysfunctional speech caused by a neurological issue. Again, everything I stated that he was showing. Any player diagnosed with ataxia will not be cleared to return. The new protocols will take effect on Sunday. Well, this is good. This is a step in the right direction. So kudos to the NFL for making the necessary changes. Hopefully, it's not too late for Tua and this man can continue his career. We would hate to see him have to walk away from the sport he loves during his prime. Now, CBS's Melanie Collins says that Tua is in great spirits and Coach McDaniel has been texting him back and forth, offering support. So that's good to hear. Glad to see that he's doing well. And like I said, hopefully this man is not forced into an early retirement. Speaking of retirement, Joe Hayden, former Florida Gator and unanimous All-American in 2009, drafted by the Cleveland Browns 7th overall in 2010, is now walking away from the NFL after a career in which he was voted to 3 Pro Bowls. Playing corner, he recorded 29 interceptions, returned 2 for touchdowns, 7 forced fumbles, and 6 fumbles recovered. Playing for the Browns and the Steelers, Joe Hayden was an exceptional cornerback during his prime. And I will always remember him as a Gator great. Also, stepping away is Cole Beasley, wide receiver, played for the Cowboys, Bills, and ever so briefly for the Bucks. Cole Beasley was undrafted coming out of SMU, but he played 11 seasons in the NFL. He played in 151 games, started 50 games, 554 receptions, 5,726 yards, and 34 touchdowns for Cole Beasley. That is a career to be proud of, especially for someone who did not hear his name called on draft day. Linebacker Clay Matthews retires after a lengthy career with the Green Bay Packers and a stint with the Rams. Matthews was drafted by Green Bay 26 overall in 2009 out of USC. He made 6 Pro Bowls, 1 All-Pro, won a Super Bowl with Green Bay. He hasn't played since 2019, so he is officially retiring now. 519 career tackles, 91.5 sacks, 6 interceptions, 2 defensive touchdowns. Matthews was an absolute beast during his prime, unstoppable, unblockable. And I believe he was a Hall of Fame caliber player. I think in the next 10 years, he makes it to the Hall of Fame. Blake Bortles also retiring, drafted by the Jaguars, 3rd overall out of UCF back in 2014. Blake Bortles, in 2015, the Jags went 5-11, but he passed for 4,428 yards, 35 touchdowns, which was 2nd place, a passer rating of 88.2, and 3 fourth-quarter comebacks. Bortles wasn't necessarily the best quarterback the Jags ever had, but we had a lot of good times with Bortles. Some of those good times include the 2017 season, but Bortles has done something that very few quarterbacks ever have. And I'm not talking about taking the Jags to the playoffs. This is every quarterback in NFL history with a season of 4,000 passing yards and 35 touchdowns within their first 2 seasons in the league. Dan Marino, Kurt Warner, Blake Bortles, Patrick Mahomes, and Justin Herbert. That is elite company. In 2017, the Jags went 10-6. They were 2-1 in the playoffs, and in the playoffs, Bortles was 49 of 85. That's a completion percentage of 57.6, 594 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions, a passer rating of 91, and 121 rushing yards on top. He has a higher career playoff passer rating than Tom Brady. During his 5 seasons with the Jags, he went 24-49. He had a passer rating of 80.6, 6 fourth quarter comebacks, 8 game winning drives, 235.3 passing yards per game, 103 passing touchdowns to 75 interceptions. He hasn't played since 2019. He's been a backup for the Rams, Packers, Saints, and Broncos. Yeah, he never started a game after leaving Jacksonville, but I think we can look back on the Blake Bortles era fondly. He also gave birth to an expression that I like to use, mostly in my head. Bortle. He threw some of the most unlucky interceptions I've ever seen, where the ball would bounce off a receiver's hand and into a defender's hand. So whenever I see an interception off of a deflected pass, in my mind I go, he bortled it. Moving on to Texas A&M and Alabama. Now, head coaches Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher were taking shots at each other before the season started. Nick Saban said that Texas A&M bought their latest recruiting class. I mean, technically not true. They got them NIL deals. So yeah, they bought them, but they didn't do anything wrong because this is a legal tactic now. Jimbo Fisher did not appreciate Nick Saban throwing shade at him, and Jimbo went on a rant that if you haven't seen, you need to check out. But the highlight mostly is him saying, "Ask anybody that's worked with Saban. Ask him about the skeletons in his closet. Ask me about him. Ask anybody that's worked with him about him." It was a very, very epic rant and meltdown. It had people psyched to see this game. Everyone thought that this would be a great game before the season started. As the season went on, A&M did not look nearly as good as we thought they were going to be. So we started thinking, that Alabama A&M game might not be as good. But we were wrong. Now, before the game, Saban pulled a stunt that I have to applaud. Bryce Young, who suffered a shoulder injury versus Arkansas, was announced as the starter and suited up for the game just for Jalen Milroe to start the game. Young never stepped foot on the field. It was a red herring. He wanted A&M to throw out their game plan last minute. That is great stuff from Nick Saban. Now, Jalen Milroe is a true freshman out of Katy, Texas. He's 6'2", 212 pounds. He was 4 of 9 for 65 yards and a touchdown, with 91 rushing yards and a touchdown versus Arkansas in relief of Young. Versus Texas A&M, Jalen Milroe was 12 of 19, 111 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He ran the ball 17 times for 83 yards. He made some very bad throws. Very bad. There were times that he looked like he didn't know what he was doing. The offense was sputtering at times. He looked very incompetent at times. It got ugly, but he has flashes of brilliance. He shows a lot of potential. I'm excited to see, after a little more seasoning, what this offense looks like with an experienced Jalen Milroe under center. Now, Texas A&M defense was playing lights out. They looked like the '85 Bears out there. I've never seen A&M's defense look that good. You can tell that they were playing their butts off for their coaches. They didn't forget what was said during the offseason. The offenses may have forgotten about the war of words between their coaches, but those defenses certainly did not. Now, the Alabama defense was also playing stellar. I got to point out Will Anderson, probably the best college football player in the world right now. Will Anderson only had 2 tackles in this game. He had 8 quarterback hurries, though. 8 times he was in the backfield, in the quarterback's face, making him get rid of the ball. That is an absurd number. They could not block him. So even though he didn't get the tackles, his presence was felt. Also, defensive back Brian Branch, 9 tackles in this game. He was everywhere on the field. It seemed like every time the whistle blew, he was either the one making the hit or he was right there at the scene of the tackle. He was everywhere. He played great. Now, speaking of quarterbacks and Texas A&M's quarterback being hurried constantly by Will Branch and the Alabama defense that racked up 14 quarterback hurries in general, 8 of which were from Will Anderson. A&M quarterback Hayes King started the season as the QB1 for the Aggies. After a while, he was benched for Max Johnson, rightfully so, because he was playing terribly. But Max Johnson was hurt, so King got the start against Alabama, and he struggled to stay competitive. He got rattled. He folded in crunch time. He was bailed out by his receivers, namely freshman wide receiver Evan Stewart. 8 catches, 106 yards. He was making insane catches to keep the drive alive. He played out of his mind. And if A&M would have won this game, Evan Stewart would have been the player of the game, hands down. Now, when it came down to the wire, Texas A&M had a chance to win this game. But their last play call was beyond questionable. Three, two, one. With only 3 seconds left in the game, no timeouts, 3rd and 10. I'm sorry, no. 1st and goal at the Alabama 2-yard line. You only have time to run one play. And Haynes King throws a pass that only gets to about the 1 or the line of scrimmage. The receivers tackled and brought to the ground instantly. What was this play? It made no sense. It didn't look good in execution. It couldn't have looked good on paper when you drew it up. It made Jimbo Fisher look like an absolute fool. And it almost spoiled a great game. You hate to see a great game end on a bad play call. Despite winning, Alabama fell to number 3 in the AP polls, even though they remain undefeated. Which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But the ranking system is borderline rigged anyway, so who really cares? On to Danny Dimes, making a comeback in London. Daniel Jones was limited in practice. The Giants had a plethora of injuries. Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, Wan'Dale Robinson, Sterling Shepard, Leonard Williams, and Azeez Oluwa were all ruled out for this game. Adoree Jackson left the game injured. Green Bay led 17-3. They were up 20-10 at halftime. Then Graham Gano makes a 37-yard field goal. And then the Giants punch it in from the 2-yard line twice in the 4th quarter. And the Giants won 27-22. Brian Daboll just outcoached Matt LaFleur in this game. And Daniel Jones, with a passer rating of 100.2, 21 of 27 for 217 yards. He ran the ball 10 times for 37 yards. Saquon Barkley got 13 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown. Barkley's looking like his old self again. Aaron Rodgers had a passer rating of 96.3. He threw for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Christian Watson was only targeted one time in this game, and he came away with 1 yard. Like I said, I don't know why Rodgers favors an elderly Randall Cobb over a fresh 6'5" Christian Watson. It doesn't make sense to me. The Giants improved to 4-1, and Daniel Jones improves to 16-26 as a Giant starter since being drafted 6th overall back in 2019. Moving on to the defending champion Rams. Matthew Stafford finally got out of Detroit, and after only one season with the Rams, won the Super Bowl, changed the narrative of his career, changed his destiny. He's getting recognized for the talent that he is, the franchise quarterback that he is. People wondering, is it Stafford or is it Detroit? Well, now you know, it was Detroit. This year, though, Stafford hasn't looked good. He has not looked the same since getting shoulder surgery during the offseason. He's completed 69.8% of his passes. He has a passer rating of 82.4. He's averaging 264.6 yards per game. This is the most telling number: 5 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Now, the Los Angeles Rams, that offensive line is missing Andrew Whitworth big time. The offensive line looks terrible. The Rams are 2-3 following a home loss to the Dallas Cowboys. They're averaging 16 points per game. They're giving up 23.2. They're 29th in points, 26th in offensive yards. They're 16th in points allowed and 11th in yards allowed. They are 2nd in the division. Liam Cohn is no Kevin O'Connell. And I don't know why they have Jay Gruden on the staff as a consultant, but get him out of there. Get Jay Gruden out of there. The rushing game has struggled and takes absolutely no pressure off of the quarterback. Sony Michel, who's now on the Chargers, looked way better last year than Cam Akers looks now. Bobby Wagner has looked good, 39 tackles and 2 sacks. And the teams are selling out to stop Aaron Donald, who has 4 sacks so far this season. And you look at this defense. They lost Von Miller. They replaced him with Bobby Wagner. It shouldn't have been too much of a drop off. There was also an incident with a fan running onto the field during their game against the 49ers. Bobby Wagner leveled the fan, took him out. The fan had a device that was emitting pink smoke, and Wagner floored him. Security upperhanded him. Wagner is now caught in the crosshairs because the fan filed a report against Bobby Wagner. No lawsuit has come out yet, but you gotta think one is coming. He called it blatant assault. This dumbass called it blatant assault. You have the nerve to bypass security, blatant trespassing onto the field with a device emitting smoke. You could be armed. They don't know. You got that thing in. Who knows what else you got? The player took it upon himself to help security, who clearly was struggling to contain you, and the player took you out. And by the way, Bobby Wagner could have sent your ass straight to the ER if he wanted to. Let's be real here. Bobby Wagner lowered his head into your chest when he delivered the hit. He did that for your protection. He wanted to incapacitate you, not injure you. He could have injured you. He should have injured you. If you would have done that in the 60s, Jim Curtis would have clotheslined your head off. But no, Bobby Wagner was looking out for your health. You should be grateful. But in any event, Moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. After a 2-1 start, the Jags are starting to look the way that I expected them to look at the beginning of the season. We ranked 15th in points for, 4th in points allowed. We destroyed the Super Bowl contending Chargers 38-10. And then we lost to the cellar dwelling 0-3-1 Texans 13-6. We couldn't score a touchdown. We put up 38 points against the Chargers, but we can't score a touchdown against the Texans? I don't understand. And Trayvon Walker had that terrible, unnecessary roughness penalty that gave up the game-winning touchdown. Well, it went on to. It kept the drive alive in which the Texans scored the game-winning touchdown. Christian Kirk and Zay Jones look like good signings, but they need to get Zay the ball deep. They do. Zay Jones has the burners. He can be a deep threat. Get him the ball deep. I don't know if we're not trying to, if he's struggling to get open deep, if we're not scheming him open, but they need to get him the ball deep because he can be a deep threat. Christian Kirk looks like a reliable receiver. He's been earning that massive contract that broke the receiving market. We need to use Jamal Agnew more. Like Agnew is such a weapon. He could have been on that top 10 underutilized players list. I could bump Julio off that list and put Agnew in there. Agnew is such a weapon. He needs to be getting the ball. Now, Trevor Lawrence is the big topic of conversation, as quarterbacks usually are. Trevor Lawrence has a completion percentage of 62.4, a passer rating of 88. He's passed for 1,232 yards. That's 246.4 yards per game. 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's run the ball 14 times for 58 yards, averaging 4.1 yards per carry. Now, he is currently 5-17 as a starter in his career. 20 passing touchdowns and 21 career interceptions. Lawrence in 2021, his completion percentage was 59.6. That's less than it is now. His passer rating was 71.9. That's way less than the 88 he has right now. He was averaging 10.1 yards per completion. Right now he's averaging 10.9. He was averaging 214.2 yards per game. As I said, he's averaging 246.4 now. His sack percentage was 5, so that's 5% of the time he's dropping back and getting sacked. Now he's only getting sacked 3.2% of the time. So it's getting better. But the last 2 weeks, it has not. Turnovers and pocket awareness. That's what Trevor needs to work on. Against Seattle, he fumbled the ball so many times, I lost count. And he cost us the game against the Seahawks. Now, he didn't wear gloves in that game. It was a rainy game. The ball was slippery. He was struggling to get a grip on the ball, but he didn't put gloves on because he's never used gloves before. He didn't want to start now. But when you're fumbling the ball 4 times in a close game, and this was against the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that honestly we have no business beating. A team that should have dog walked us in all honesty. A team that is the only undefeated team left in the league. And yet, we held a lead. We were playing them tight. We were going blow for blow with them. We were standing toe to toe. We were in there. We were in that fight. But Lawrence fumbled that game away. And against the Texans, again, turnovers and pocket awareness. That interception in the end zone against Houston was so egregious. It was so unwatchable. There's no reason that pass needed to be thrown. And if you score that touchdown, then it's not 13-6, it's 13-13. That game probably goes into overtime. Or if Trevor doesn't throw that interception, and we get a touchdown or field goal, we have 9 instead of 6. And then Trayvon Walker doesn't get that unfathomably stupid unnecessary roughness penalty. Then the Texans' drive is over. They don't score that game-winning touchdown. We win this game. If Trevor doesn't throw the interception and Walker doesn't commit that stupid penalty, if those two egregious infractions don't take place, the Jaguars win this game. But now we're 2-3. We're now third in the division. And Trevor Lawrence needs to step it up. Now, he's on pace for a good season. According to Brett James, he's on pace for over 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. That's good. But numbers aren't everything. There's the tail of the tape. And the tail of the tape is that Lawrence needs to get it together. On to offensive and defensive players of the week. For third place in offensive player of the week, Austin Ekeler. He played a great game. He had 199 total yards and multiple touchdowns. Second place is Taysom Hill, throwing and rushing for touchdowns. He also recovered a fumble, which kept the drive alive. Good for him. He had 3 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown. But our offensive player of the week is Josh Allen. Josh Allen, 20 of 31, 424 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a passer rating of 134.1. This included a 98-yard touchdown pass to Gabe Davis. You don't see very many 98-yard touchdowns. Allen, yet another 400-yard performance during the season. He has been exceptional this year. And yet the MVP race, Tua seems to be out of it. The MVP race, it really comes down to Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. One of these guys has got to win MVP. And when Allen is putting up performances like that, it's hard not to give it to him. Defensive player of the week is Micah Parsons, the Dallas Cowboys stud linebacker. 5 tackles, 2 sacks. He's been the leader of this defense. Dallas improves to 4-1. They look like actual contenders. Usually when, Cowboy fans say, we're back, this is our year, we them boys, we as a community, a football community, collectively roll our eyes. Yeah, sure it is. No, it's not. It's really not. But this year, with the offense doing what they're doing with Cooper Rush under center, the career journeyman quarterback, the career backup, I don't think he's really a journeyman. I think he's been with Dallas his whole career. He's not really a journeyman, but he's been a career backup out of Central Michigan. Central Michigan's not a school you turn to for quarterbacks. But he's undefeated as a starter. The offense is playing well, and that defense is lights out. This is one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. And it's largely thanks to that man right there, Micah Parsons. So, if you're a Cowboy fan, a lot to be excited about. You might actually be them boys. And that has been our show. If you haven't seen the interview I did with Gideon Ajagbe, please do so. The link will be in the description of this video. We talk about Deion Sanders, Billy Napier, Anthony Richardson, and NIL deals, and he tells us about his experience as a college football player and what life is like when football is over. Once your playing days end and it's time to go out into the real world. What's that like? What the adjustment is like? So check out that video, and please, if you enjoyed this video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back next week with more Sports Done Right.